Hello and welcome back to Prism and Company. My name is Colin, and on the docket today, we're going way back. We're throwing it back old school to one of my favorite TV shows from the 90s, Undiscovered Amazing, featuring Jeff Amazing. If you never saw it, it was such a delight. They took these weird, little bits of pop culture and kind of interpreted them through the lens of history. It was totally a joke show. It was so cool though. And the particular episode I want to talk about features the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. It's really fun. They kind of treat it like it's an old mermaid, like Rosetta Stone kind of. I won't spoil it too much because we're going to get in there and kind of see all the fun that Undiscovered Amazing has to offer. I can't wait to get into it with you guys. But first, cue the intro. I think to really appreciate Undiscovered Amazing, you have to meet Jeff Amazing and just the schmooze of a host that he was. And he got on all these like specialists, and we'll see our guest specialist as well, who's going to be just a ton of fun as we kind of dive into the world of the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. So let's meet him. Let's see the beginning of the episode, and we'll be back in a moment. Good evening, and welcome to Undiscovered Amazing with me, Jeff Amazing. It's a question that humanity has been asking itself for years, millennia, centuries. Mermaids, are they real? And if so, where do they come from? Well, my friends, scientists have discovered these strange artifacts, these bizarre parchments that seem to depict, of all things, a mermaid culture. What mysteries can we learn by diving into the nooks and crannies? What evidence is there to support the mermaid narrative? Join me, Jeff Amazing, as we dive in and see what there is to discover. But alas, there isn't a ton of Undiscovered Amazing anymore. It wasn't a super popular show, so it never got archived very well. I did a little bit of poking though at the edges of the internet, and eventually, you look long enough, you'll find anything. So I was able to scrap together enough of the important stuff in the episode to kind of get the point of it across. To give you some context, because it'll be a little bit patchwork, the episode is talking about the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot in context of its colors. How do the colors in the deck relate to what the culture of these mermaids might look like? For example, blue is going to be our first color, and that's going to be kind of like baseline life. So we'll hear our guest expert, Dr. Dexter Pointman, who is probably my favorite character in the show and was the guest expert on every episode, regardless of the topic. So a very well-versed man, apparently. But yes, we're gonna meet the rest of our cast here, see what they have to say, and as he goes through and defines all the colors, we'll then take a step back and see more examples than we get to see in the show of cards in the deck and talk about how they do or do not kind of fit into this narrative. Okay, without much more ado, let's get back to the amazing. But mysteries are my business. Me, Jeff Amazing. And so when traditional science said that they couldn't or wouldn't decipher these strange parchments, we turn to other sources, our own internal team of researchers, to help us identify exactly what's going on with this new undiscovered mermaid culture.
I don't honestly think that's the correct question we should be asking, because if we turn to the documents, if we turn to the source material, at least the source material that we have in front of us, it's written in English. The linguistics is not the thing that's holding us up here. No. It's not It's not a question of communication. The honestly, the idea that these peoples would look like you and me, except for the mermaid tails, but I mean, there are people even depicted without the tails. So the fact that we could sit down together and read a book, or we could discuss the latest movie, is quite frankly beyond believable. So the question does not become the linguistics, but instead we need to reach for what is the symbology. What can we learn from these peoples? And that's really where I think we should be focusing our efforts, quite frankly. And I think that's the richest vein. No, actually, you'd be referring to the color blue. If I were to sort through this one, we'll take this for example. Blue exists as sort of a neutral space for these peoples, because if you think about it, if these are in fact mermaids, as we believe them to be, they're living in an aquatic situation. Their ecosystem is that of water and not of land, which it sounds like you're telling tales out of school. But I mean, you turn to the documents when you don't know. You turn to the documents, and there is such an abundance of blue in the. And look at this. This is a peaceful car. This is a person at rest, and like we would. This would be death for us. But we have to think outside of our understanding of what water is, and reconceptualize, because this is ground zero. This would be like me laying in a field of posies. Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that?
All right, the card that our kind doctor was talking about was the Four of Swords. Here we see, someone lying down underwater, covered by seaweed, and just like he was saying, this would normally be a pretty like grim image if this was a human, but we're in mermaid land. We are in the land of blue. Water is kind of our baseline. So how does water being the baseline factor into different cards throughout the deck? Here it takes this, what could be very disturbing image, and make it really peaceful and calm. I think this is one of the most beautiful cards, at least in the sword suit, and that's a lot of good cards in the sword suit. Things like the white kind of bleeding in. It almost looks like there are bits of light kind of filtering in through the water. Things get darker and shadowier as we kind of get caught behind some of the underwater foliage here. I think there are a lot of the craftsmanship issues with this deck, especially the way it's drawn. But there are really, really beautiful areas like that always stick out to me. I think it's so cool. Kind of similar thing. We have another one where normally this would be kind of upsetting, like a person looking up through the water and something reaching out. You could fathom that being in like a horror movie, let's say. There's a scene from Lord of the Rings, and forgive me, I haven't seen these movies in forever. I've never read the books. I'm sorry. I'm losing nerd points all over. But there are these things under the water that are looking up, and as they cross by, they're like emerging from the water. It's terrifying. As a kid, I was like horrified by the whole thing. This card could give you those vibes, but instead, again, we have this beautiful lady down below. It seems very peaceful. The ripples are just kind of cascading out. We even have some lotuses around. So again, we're establishing just like baseline, baseline, baseline. This is what happens in this culture. But what kind of fabulous activities can you anticipate doing in the Dame Darcy land? Why, of course, there's shark riding, because who doesn't love riding a good shark? Not only is the water here, which is, giving us, in this case, kind of implied blue, because the water's actually green. We have blue sky in the background. So even though it is above the surface of the water, blue is cueing us in that, like, yes, this is a normal thing that's happening. And our mermaid's tail is blue. Merman, merperson, mer individual. Anyway, all of their tails are blue. Establishing that, like, this is every day. And how cool would that be if every day you got to, like, ride a shark or hurl a harpoon at someone? I guess that's a trident. Can a trident and a harpoon be this? We're moving on. Here we have the Ace of Cups. And I like this one because, yes, our water is established as normal, but the water spilling out of this cup just means that, like, abundant water everywhere will be your day-to-day. Want to come live in mermaid land? Expect there to be water gushing out of everything. There's a rock over there, there's probably water gushing out of it. There's a tree over there, probably not, because you're underwater, and it can't survive underwater. Unless there's a cool aqua tree there. I'm not here to say there's not. Blue is used in one really cool way, though, and that's with the moon card. This is my favorite tarot card, not this particular one, but the moon is. So I'm always very intrigued when a cool moon card emerges. But here, it's very blue. We have tons of blue water, and just the fact that it is water is, again, reinforcing conceptually that this is a blue card. So we have this normalcy, and there's also this kind of like manic craziness that's happening. She's dancing. There are these tentacles emerging from the water. We're not sure if, her tail splits into tentacles and they rise up, or is this some kind of kraken from the deep that's rising? But it's just infecting the normalcy of the day-to-day. So it's this kind of cool, fun, chaotic energy that is seeping in to everyday life. And I think that's a really cool way to kind of interpret the moon card. Now, most of the colors in the deck, or the cards in the deck, have red for the text. And we'll find out soon what red means from our good professor, our good doctor. But it's kind of neat to have red on this particular card as our normalcy is kind of going crazy and reaching up towards red. But speaking of, let's take a look at what red means with another installment of Undiscovered Amazing.
I think it's easy enough to see. Take the color red, for example. Clearly, they have deified the color red in some respects. If you take this image, for example, this is showing a deity that is residing over the underworld. Now, there's a lot of evidence to point to red being a color for death, which makes sense. It just, quite frankly, if you think about it biologically, I mean, I am no biologist. I'll be very frank with you, and I've never studied these people groups, but if you think about it, most things bleed, and that's red. And if you take the color red and sort of track it throughout the documents, you'll really see this understanding of exactly what's happening. And I think it's very curious, and this is a good point to kind of enter into that conversation. And I think it's a conversation worth entering, quite frankly.
This is the card that the doctor, honey, was talking about, the devil. And we can definitely see red is a huge color here. So if red is our color of death, it's kind of our death deity here in the devil. And I like it because he's kind of like nervous and crying a little bit. I like the idea that in such a watery deck with an aquatic culture, the thing that would scare even the death god would be fire. It's kind of burning on the bottom. And we see our mermaids, which normally have luscious green tails and things, now with red tails on the bottom, to really drive home the fact that, yes, everything here has died. We are now in the land of the death. There are other cards that kind of support this narrative too, like the Seven of Wands here. We can see, red is crashing down. We know that blue is kind of the baseline color for the whole narrative, the whole world. So our mermaid is, wearing blue. They are in blue water. The cups have some blue on the bottom, but red is crashing down. And clearly this mermaid's freaked out. Like, death is imminent. Death is upon them. And it adds a pretty, grim read to this Seven of Wands. Normally the Seven of Wands feels kind of like fighting and resilient. I think this particular version, through the lens of red being a color of death or, like a bad color, it's very eminent. It's very like one versus many and you're losing. I think it's kind of cool. I like it when certain decks can kind of skew things one way or the other just to add a little extra variety or flavor. Not all is scary in the world of red in the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot, though. I have two examples of where it could be a lot of fun. Take here the Queen of Wands and the Nine of Cups. Both of these, red is our dominant color. There's a lot of yellow in the background, but like our figure with the leg up, every ounce of your attention is drawn to the red here. And even though our figure's not in red, the tablecloth, boom, it's like there's literal confetti falling on it. It is absolutely dominating the attention of the composition. And this shows us that this culture might actually celebrate death in some ways, or at least, treat it as a celebration. Kind of think celebration of life as opposed to mourning for death. I think it's doing it in two different ways, though. I'm imagining this person dressed in black, maybe being at a wake. Someone has passed. but they are treating this moment of passing as a celebration. They're not afraid of it. They know it comes, and so they're gonna live it up and celebrate it. On the other side, the Queen of Wands here, I see this as someone who is being very reckless. They are burning the candle at both ends. They say, what is this saying? Live fast, die young kind of idea, like they're going for it. They are wearing red. They are embracing it. They're even showing us underneath the dress, there's a red stocking that they're putting on too. Even on their head, they're saying, yes, death will come. I'm going to enjoy every moment and be as flamboyant as I can along the way. I think that's pretty cool. And then my very favorite card with red in the whole deck is the Page of Wands. I think this card is really, really cool. Here we see a sailor from the deck. There are lots of these sailors that kind of appear throughout the cards. All of them have black and white stripes on. For example, take the Ten of Swords and the Death card. Both cards that feature red, kind of reinforcing the death theme. And we can see our sailors here wearing black and white, very clearly dead. Depending on how you want to read the 10, this can be very symbolic, but let's go literally for a second. That dude's dead. That is stabbed many old times. The ship has sunk. The ship hath sunk. But here, we see that red is moved to the shirt of our Page of Wands. So I'm imagining this card is the afterlife. I think of the Page of Wands very much as a card of kind of like fuel for the fire. It's growing. So let's take this as somebody transitioning from one life to the next. Maybe there is a resurrective or kind of karmic cycle in this culture. We have someone who is now wearing red. They are what they were in life, but they're now dead. They're kind of branded by the fact that they're dead. But they're looking up. They're looking at two acorns, seeds that would be planted and would grow into new trees, even symbolically holding this wand that is growing into a new tree. This idea that, death might not be permanent. It is replanted, and from that little seed, something new will blossom. So we have this character kind of embodying that only because they're wearing red. They're wearing the color that is ingrained with death. I think it's really cool and really beautiful. And this card in particular made me totally fall in love with this deck. Let's get back to the professor, the doctor, honey, and see what our next color, our final color, will be.
And even take, for example, the color yellow. Because it doesn't come up a lot, if I'm being honest. And that's actually more interesting to me when things don't come up a lot. Because, like blue, we talked about blue, that's ground zero, but like yellow is a far more sparing use of a pigment. And it's interesting that this whole thing kind of revolves around the primary colors, at least as far as we know them, yellow, red, and blue. And so yellow, we find, is the opposite of red in this case, because red takes you down. Red is the underworld and it's death. And it seems like yellow there's something associated with maybe nautical mermaid heaven and God. Like, I'd love to be there, right? It would be fascinating for study purposes, if I'm being clear with you. It's a completely academic sort of desire. But just take a look at the card, and you'll see that they sort of deify not only the idea of yellow, of the sun. It's above them. It's what's floating up top. But the idea of the nautical imagery as well. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, and I am fascinated.
Oh, can I just take him home? He's so cute. I love it. Here we have the Wheel of Fortune, the card that good doctor was talking about, featuring the color yellow, our color of nautical mermaid heaven, as he said. So we see, yellow figures, a yellow wheel, and basically no water. There's blue here, but blue is very clearly representing the sky, as opposed to blue in previous cards, which is kind of hinting more towards water. Now, I do realize my inherent flip-flop with that. I explicitly called blue out in one card as the sky, kind of reinforcing water, so you'll have to roll with me. The documents are complicated, honey. I think here, though, the yellow is kind of our dominant color. It's definitely standing out more. And I like the idea of almost a fetishizing of humanity, like above the surface. And not even that they want to live up there, but almost the same way that, one country might look at another country's culture and be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get all of the swag from that country because they do it so cool. Meanwhile, that country's like, this is like day to day life. It's fine. We're doing the same thing with our mermaids here. Mermaids want to be people so bad. They're totally Little Mermaiding this. They want to be where the people are. So we look here at the Empress, and we can see a mermaid decked out in yellow. They are looking skyward. This mermaid has painted her tail yellow, or maybe embellished it with some kind of cool gold plating. We have gold accessories. This could even, if we're thinking of the whole color scheme up, maybe be some kind of mermaid deity, because we have red draped over the top, so maybe there's an element of death or the afterlife kind of in there, mixed with yellow. Same thing happens with the magician and with the sun card. Here we can definitely see, two mermaids that are very clearly clad in red, and it's like all upwards. This mermaid is reaching towards the sky. The seahorse is jumping out. We see these waves erupting skyward. Everything is pointing us up, 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 and then finally bursting forth on top. Like we're clearly wanting to ascend on these two cards. Same idea though. We have maybe kind of a deific figure with yellow in the background. So it's showing us that above water, we're clearly above water in these two, is the place to be. It's where the hotness is. And maybe that's an afterlife kind of thing. It's hard to say. If it was just these two examples, I'd say for sure we're looking at a kind of life after death hope situation. And maybe the Empress, this is the card that makes me think, well, maybe not. Maybe this is just someone who's trying to embrace this, but in her life. She is a figure, maybe like a temple goer or an oracle or something, who lies under the red fabric, and she kind of prophesies about what life will look like afterwards, once you have risen above the waves and gone to the land of the yellow. I think that idea kind of shows up in the star here as well. I almost imagine this like a mural painted in a temple, in the underwater city. We've got a mermaid who is all under the water, and water is being poured onto her, keeping her down. And then we have just a tiny hint of red right here in the center. And then finally we are ascending to the stars on top. So that's, again, kind of this like, here is life, and then there's this transition, and then we're moving upwards towards yellow. The reason I said that they're all about humanity, there's a couple of cards that depict yellow for humans, and like very clearly, like our ship here is yellow with yellow pentacles on it. We have our human standing amongst a yellow golden sky and a human literally wrapped in a yellow jacket. So we're pointing the color yellow, this deific. Is deific a word? I'm using it a lot. I don't know if it's a word. If it's not, I'm coining it right here. Jeff Amazing said it. I didn't say it. It was just in a part I didn't show you. This like afterlife-y kind of higher status to humanity in some ways. So we have tons of the deck that is blue, showing us kind of normal life. This weird transition in red, and then finally just a little bit of yellow splashed in. And one kind of note before, we were talking about red, and I'd mentioned that all the text basically is red in this deck. Whoop. And, I think it's kind of pointing to the fact that there's a yearning for transition in this culture. Take the Fool, for example. She's clearly transitioning through this loop. Her tail is red, so maybe an afterlife kind of thing. Our text is red too. We have yellow in the background. She's got yellow on this side of her head once she's gone through the transition, but she's going back down to the water. So is this talking about maybe a cyclical thing where you're, karmic debt trying to escape the loop, but you often go back into the sea and finally you'll be able to sort of eject skyward? I think maybe so. I think that could be a cool way to, kind of interpret what is happening in the mermaid culture here that we're seeing. Hopefully this has made any ounce of sense and hasn't been a total ramble. I had a lot of fun talking about it. I think instead of me wrapping this up, I'm going to let Jeff Amazing and his amazing crew wrap us up. One more little dip into Undiscovered Amazing. It has been so much fun talking about the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot with you all, and I hope you enjoyed this little throwback to a classic 90s TV show. I'll see you next time and have a great day. Bye-bye.
That's it. That's the big one. Honestly, is it true? You know, because I think we could talk for days about the validity of the artifacts, the source material, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because I think there's power in stories, and I think that regardless of if this is mermaid culture or not, it's not important. It's not important. I have colleagues who would run me out. You know, they'd run me right out of Chicago if they knew. But it's more important to me to discuss the narrative. How can we take the symbols? How can we take what we can see, true or not, and apply it to ourselves? And how can we use that to make ourselves better? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Whether it's science or these deified mermaids, whatever, it's all about making ourselves better. And when we get better individually, we get better holistically. And I think that's very special.